Today's episode is brought to you by Positively Productive Systems, whose mission is to be the antidote to your stress and to provide compassionate productivity resources and coaching that help you heal and achieve. Be sure to check out both free and paid resources at positivelyproductive.com/resources.
When I say your overall strategy, goals are part of that, but mindset is equally as important because your external world is a direct reflection of your internal world. So it doesn't matter what goals I give you. If you're not going to look inside, more than likely that self-sabotage is going to keep creeping in, which is like the money blocks will still be there. So you might get through it for 1 or 2 weeks or even 6 months. But you might have another growth spurt and now you're hitting 20K months. Well, guess what? If you haven't got to the root of what's causing that at the first place, it's going to keep appearing, right? So again, when we talk about goals, yes, that's part of the overall strategy, but we need to be looking at mindset.
You're listening to the Positively Living Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Zawrotny, founder of Positively Productive Systems and a coach certified in time and stress management, helping clients make space for what matters most in their lives. Join me each episode and we'll talk about decluttering, stress management, habits, personalized productivity, gratitude, and so much more. I understand the overwhelm of life because I'm a wife, mom to kids and cats, and a former caregiver. I'm here to help you choose what's right for you so you can do less, live more, and breathe easier. Sound good? Let's get to it. If you're an entrepreneur, today's episode of the Positively Living Podcast is a must listen. I encourage you to save and share this one, especially with the women entrepreneurs you know, because it is packed with value. A conversation that began as a way to identify why we need to set goals and how to achieve them turned into a business strategy masterclass with my guest, Angela Henderson, and I can't wait for you to be inspired by all she has to share. Angela is an international award-winning business coach for women, international keynote speaker, and podcaster who helps women in business get all the pieces in place to have consistent 5-figure months and then on to 6- and 7-figure years without burning out in the process. I've known and followed Ange for years now and had the pleasure of collaborating with her as a productivity coach for her mastermind members, and she's coached me in business as well. I simply adore how real she is and how she's lived what she teaches. I'm a huge fan of walking our own talk, which I try to do myself at every opportunity, and you'll see how Ange does that too. In this jam-packed conversation, Ange shares the 7 major mindset blocks you need to address before setting goals. Also, the 3 reasons why you need goals and the 3 reasons why you don't achieve your goals. She shares the number one thing she sees business owners do that keep them from achieving their goals and what to do about it. We also cover SMART goals as a good starting point for goal setting, but address where they fall short and how alignment of our mission, vision, and purpose is necessary for our success. You're going to walk away from this episode with her framework for strategic planning and so much more. Before we get into the interview, I wanted to quickly share one reason Ange says goal setting is important: to clear your brain and avoid the paralysis of choice and action that happens when your mind is cluttered. If you'd like support with mental decluttering so you can get clarity faster and more effectively, I welcome you to book a strategy session at positivelyproductive.com/strategy. You can use promo code PODCAST for a very special listener discount. Welcome, Angela Henderson, to the Positively Living Podcast. I am so excited to talk to you. This has been a long time coming, and I cannot wait to dig into an awesome topic that is so very you.
Yeah. Well, I'm super excited to be here. It's always good to be in your energy and your presence. So yeah, it may have been a long time in coming, but I'm also a believer that we're all right on time. Everything happens the way that the universe wants it to happen. But yeah, just getting to know you over the last probably 18 months, it's been an absolute pleasure. So I'm really excited to be here today.
Yeah, we've had a chance to work together in a variety of ways. You have been my coach, and I'm a huge fan of what you do. And you've also invited me to coach participants of your mastermind and help boost their productivity. And it's just been a great collaboration and Today, we're going to talk about something that you teach constantly and you teach so well, and that's goals. But before we get into it, I would love it if you would tell us a bit about who you are and who you help and what makes you light up.
What makes me light up? All right. Well, who am I? I'm Ange. And what I say to people is even though I live in Brisbane, Australia now, I'm still a proud Canadian and you can't take the Canadian out of me. And I always joke with people, I'm like, but what's not to love? We've got moose, we've got beavers, we've got poutine, which people, if you don't know, it's French fries with cheese and gravy. All right. We've got Pamela Anderson. I mean, life is pretty good when we have the Canadian in us. So again, super proud Canadian. I love Nutella. I eat that straight from the jar. I love that. I'm also a mom to two delightful little souls, Finley, John, and Chloe Glenella. And I've got this amazing British bulldog that we've had for a year named Grateful. So, I mean, life is pretty cruisy. But in regards to business, I've been in business now for 11 years. My first business was an e-com business, which was named after my son, Finley, focusing on creating childhood memories through play, love, and travel. So again, the story, we started off with 0 followers, 0, etc. And when we closed Finley and Me, we had 1,400 different educational products in all of our different lines. We had 50,000 people plus on our email list, 70,000 people on Facebook, and 20,000 on Instagram. So it was really great for me to understand the importance of building visibility, but also Finley and Me allowed us the opportunity to understand multiple income streams because through Finley and Me, I also became one of Australia's leading influencers. I was signed with Netflix as one of their top influencers, one of their top 30 influencers in Australia and New Zealand. And for those in North America, I worked with brands like your Hiltons, your Club Meds, your Whole Foods, your variety of different places. So that was really cool to be able to leverage both e-com products and that. And then people just wanted to start picking my brain. And as an ex-mental health clinician and a bit of a giver, I was like, oh, sure, I'll meet you for a coffee, but I don't even drink coffee. And then I was driving like 30 minutes one way, paying for my own Diet Coke. Then I was driving back and I was like, well, this isn't sustainable. And after like literally 14 coffee dates I was driving, I was like, oh, if I would have charged those people for my expertise, I could have a secondary business. And that's like the consulting was never on the playing cards. It just naturally evolved. Yeah, now I work with women all around the world to make sure that we can get all those pieces in place to help them start to make 4 and 5 figure months and then on to 6 and 7 figure years without burning out in the process. So yeah, so that's a little bit about what I love and what I do for business.
Yeah. And I know that it lights you up to see women succeed in their business.
There's nothing more exciting for me to know that we're getting more wealth into the hands of women. And it's not just like, obviously, yes, it's my own hidden agenda. And yes, I love making money, but I love knowing that other women are making money because there's more than enough for all of us to have substantial wealth, right? The other thing is we know that men statistically, and this is data, not an Angela Henderson, that men are less likely to contribute wealth back into society and the world. So when we get money into the hands of women, women are more likely to not only see change within their home environment, change within their local community, because they might donate something to this, advocate for this sponsorship, but then we typically see it do like a trickle effect or a knock-on effect to either bigger national projects and or international impact. So for me, yes, I get very excited about ensuring women have the tools, community, and resources they need, either paid or unpaid, so that they can continue to get more wealth into their hands.
I love that. And I love that it's not only an incredible mission, because I mean, just alone saying, I love to support other women. And that's something that I do. I seek out women for the podcast. I seek out women, to contribute in some way to the businesses that they are developing, not just as a paid coach, but, in a lot of different collaborative ways. And even when I am looking to hire someone, I am looking for women and moms especially. But this concept that we actually take what we earn and we feed more back into society is just a wonderful feedback loop. And I've seen you in action in terms of that lighting you up. And I love that about you. And I also love the Nutella part. Nutella aside, let's get into this idea of goal setting. And you've worked with so many women now, especially, you can see the trends that happen in terms of what's happening with goals. We want to talk a bit about why we need them and why there's a hesitation about them, because I know that I've seen this and I know you've seen it too. What do you see when it comes to goals, and especially with women entrepreneurs?
So I look at goals and then I tie that in with strategy. So I think goals are a part of your overall business strategy, right? So it's like understanding where we're going is what I look at goals, kind of like a map. But your goals aren't just necessarily the end all and be all, right? So I'm looking at more like, what is your strategic approach and how are your goals going to be able to help you reach whatever that end result is? But what I typically see is, again, I can only go off of the thousands of women that I've worked with over the years, is that they typically come to me and they're like, oh my goodness, I know what I need to do. Right. And that's the thing is women doubt themselves. All right. And that self-doubt starts to come into play. And I guess what I'll talk about actually first before we kind of go in is one of the main things that I see with women is that when that self-doubt starts to creep in and they're like, I just don't have this, I don't have this, the reality of it is more than likely there's 7 kind of major mindset blocks that I typically see when I work with women, from self-trust to self-love to worthiness, money blocks, obsessive thinking, divine timing, and imposter syndrome. So a lot of times these 1 or 2 or 3 of these 7 major mindset blocks are appearing in their world. So sometimes it could be a money block where they're like, if I put my goals on paper, that could mean that I actually might succeed. And if I succeed, I actually might have more money than what my partner makes. And if I've got more money than my partner makes, he might leave me. So therefore, I won't come up with a strategy or goals. And now they might not be thinking that, but from a subconscious level, there's probably something there. Now that's just an example. If they're having a block around imposter syndrome, which again, we potentially see, which is just simply meaning refers to believing that you're not as competent as others perceive you to be, you also might not want to do your strategy and goals because you're like, well, who am I to be doing that? I mean, I could be here for an hour just talking about why people don't do it, right? But typically I see it's around one of those 7 major mindset blocks that I talk about. And when I get on the call and they're like, oh yeah, I'm like, so that's why, again, it's so important that when I say your overall strategy, goals are part of that, but mindset is equally as important because your external world is a direct reflection of your internal world. So it doesn't matter what goals I give you. If you're not going to look inside, more than likely that self-sabotage is going to keep creeping in, which is like the money blocks will still be there. So you might get through it for 1 or 2 weeks or even 6 months, but you might have another growth spurt and now you're hitting 20K months. Well, guess what? If you haven't got to the root of what's causing that at the first place, it's going to keep appearing. Right. So again, when we talk about goals, yes, that's part of the overall strategy, but we need to be looking at mindset. So to go back to that original question in regards to what do I see and why do women not do this? It's typically one of those 7, major mindset blocks that is really coming into them. And then they come to me and they just say things like, Ange, there's so much chaos. I've got so much chaos. And then it's like almost paralysis. I need to get these thoughts from my head, but I don't actually know where to start. But here's the kicker. They actually know what they need to do. I reckon 90 to 95% of women actually know what they need to do, but they just kind of need a little bit of guidance, a little bit of support around making that happen. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but I think it's worth talking about the mindset and then when they come after.
No, it's hugely worth talking about this because with any system, and I see this all the time in the productivity and organizing side of it, is that you think about the time when you've done some kind of decluttering. You've gotten a closet in order, or maybe a room looks really good, and it's a classic case of tidying it up. But if you haven't addressed the underlying root causes, if you haven't set up a foundation or the habits to, close the task loop and reset the room back in place, a week, a month, who knows, suddenly you're looking at it and you're like, what happened?
Totally.
Yeah. So doing that foundational work first, that's a huge part of it. So really there's 2 things happening here. One is this is why we're probably hesitant about the goals. And it's also encouraging us to say, if we do that work, then it's going to make that goal setting easier, stronger, a little bit of everything, because we're ready to step into it.
Exactly right. Like your confidence starts to build a little bit more. You start to believe in yourself a little bit more. That self-worth starts to come into a little bit more. And naturally, how can you deny that when all of those things start to fall in place, that energy that you're putting off to yourself and the universe and your clients and social media content, it's going to be captured in that. And so the heaviness of like, oh, I've got chaos. Oh, I don't know what to do. Oh, I'm not worthy. Oh, imposter syndrome. That is going to have an energetic playing field in this equation. When you get to the root cause and you start to look at those things, you're going to shift the energy. You're going to shift your vibration. And naturally, those goals are going to help you to generate more revenue, which means, of course, you're going to then be able to squash those ideas of like, evidence. You're going to be like, well, my new evidence, my new pathways are actually saying, if I do this, this is what's going to happen. And it's safe for me to make more money, etc. So, yeah.
So let's dig into that side of it with this idea in mind that we are working on the foundational work, which, by the way, is a repeat process. So I don't want anyone to mistake this concept as, oh, well, I'll get it done and then I'll be finished. Yeah, mindset work is
No.
forever and ever. But that's okay because it's new levels, it's exciting, and you get it better each and every time. Trust us because we're both in it with you. So, given that you start to work on these foundational things and you step into goal setting with this understanding, maybe while you're doing parallel work, why? Why is it that we need to set these goals?
Yeah, I mean, one, like I said, getting the chaos from your head. Two, being able to prioritize what's going to give you the biggest return on investment, right? And understanding what not only about the return on investment, but three, what should I do first that will help gain momentum? Because when you gain momentum, money loves momentum. All right. So again, by understanding kind of that leeway, then you're like, okay, this is what I have to do. But if I do this first, the momentum's going to come. I'm then going to see the ROI. And then that positive cycle, that positive loop starts to happen. I mean, again, other benefits is looking at data, right? When you start to look at the goals that you're putting down, if you genuinely continue to look at them monthly, weekly, quarterly, whatever, data doesn't lie. So if this is what you have on your paper, and then you go to cross check, hey, did I do 4 podcasts this quarter? Because that's what I said I was going to do and you didn't. You can't hide from what you haven't done. Now, it's not about making you feel bad, but it's also about being realistic. Because again, if that's what you're saying you're going to do and you don't do it, well, what are the blocks? Why are you self-sabotaging? What does that mean? Or why are you procrastinating? Or why are we doing whatever, right? It could have been that people that is actually, when I talk about, I do monthly goal setting in all of my programs every month. And one of the things that I say to the women when we're doing the monthly goal setting in conjunction with the 90-day and the yearly is that I say, did you not achieve your goals this month because you self-sabotaged? Or did you not achieve your goals because of environmental? And I think that's very important to understand the distinction, because if you're in the middle of COVID lockdown, like some of my clients in Melbourne and Sydney are, if for those of those that understand like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's 5 tiers. The higher you go up, the more that you are to be creative and blah, blah, blah. But when you're in something like lockdown, you typically run from those bottom 2 tiers, which is really basically survival, breathing, eating, showing up. And so if your goals aren't being met and it's due to environmental factors like COVID, then you're like, okay, this may not actually be a mindset thing. This could just be an environmental thing and give myself a little bit of a break, right? Now, I'm not minimizing that you still don't continue to work on the mindset. That never changes, like you said. But for that particular month, it might just simply mean I've been homeschooling for 300 days. It's the end of the year and I'm freaking exhausted. And again, I'm mindful of that, but that's why my goals didn't get done. So understanding what your bandwidth is really important.
Yeah, and that leads right into what I teach about energy management. And so, one of the questions that I had, and I think this kind of dovetails nicely, is this idea that maybe too, with certain goals that we set at certain times, depending upon environmental, situations, might be unrealistic. Have you seen that? Right?
Oh gosh, 100%. If you think, I mean, at time of recording, we're about to head into the festive season, all right? And whenever people think fa la 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 la, they automatically think, oh, it's joyful, it's fun, it's whatever. But Christmas is actually one of the most stressful times of year for human beings. Why? Financial stressors could be you've lost job, but you've got kids and you really want to have a nice, get them presents and stuff, but you might not have finances. It could also be like, oh shit, I've got to sit down and have dinner with the mother-in-law and I want to do you know what I mean? Stab her. All right, not really, but you get what I'm saying. It could be like, oh my goodness, it's my year for the Christmas dinner. And I know that it has to be perfect. And then we put this pressure that Christmas has, or whatever, do you know what I mean, holiday you follow. But, I've got there's this pressure that it has to be perfect. And so 100% understanding, again, I go back to that bandwidth about what's coming up in the future in the next kind of 3 months or so, if you're looking at quarterly planning, is really important because you might say, actually, for the month of December, I'm pretty much just going to be like, I'm just kicking it, right? Because it's too stressful for me. Also, it could be like Christmas is also a hard time if people have had a lot of loved ones pass away. And it's especially like it's like their first Christmas not being there, right? And it never gets easier. But what I'm saying is that first is always hard, right? So understanding the pressures from, like, say, holidays, understanding the pressures from just external environments, COVID and all that, it's important to understand when you start planning these, because if not, it's almost like you're setting yourself up to fail from the beginning. And when you start looking at goals, the other thing that people forget often about is, in the world we live in, is more is better. Well, that's what they think.
Yeah.
I'm also about actually less is best. But it's very hard to tell people that when it's been so ingrained into us that we have to do more, more, more. But the businesses that I work with that set very simplistic goals are actually the ones that typically achieve them, because again, it is achievable, right? And they're more likely to gain that momentum because, again, it feels easy. And that's the thing is, business can be easy. You can run a business with elegance and you don't have to go into this hustle mentality.
Could we say that a little louder for the people in the back, please? Or to quote my other guest, Jeff Harry, who was all about play and curiosity, preach.
Yeah.
It's so true. Let's have some freedom from the hustle. Yeah, I said that on purpose because that is one of my previous podcast episodes. We are in this hustle culture and there are these expectations. So I think that also touches on this idea that our goals and how we plan need to be ours, not other people's.
100%. That's the thing. Is like, well, I want to make $1 million. Okay, great. I mean, I genuinely am all about more money, but is that what you want or is that what you've read? Because there's also this culture about, and don't get me wrong, and I don't want to be a hypocrite, is I do work with women to hit 4 and 5 figure months and then on to 6 and 7 figure years. But you have to remember is that a 6-figure year could be $100,000 that replaces their corporate job, but is more in alignment for them because they get to be at their kids' ballet, pick up, drop off, whatever. 6 figures doesn't have to mean $800,000, right? So it's about figuring out, are these goals in alignment for you and what does that look like? Because again, the culture that is pushing, I feel, in entrepreneurship is you must be 7 figures in order to be successful. So I think it's important to be able to understand, what does success look like to you? Right? What's in alignment for you, and really to run your own race course. It's quite easy because of social media and the access that we have to other platforms to be scrolling on any given day, because we all typically do, and start going, oh, they're doing that. I need to do that. Oh, they're doing that. And they forget about the piece about what lights them up, what excites them, what is in alignment, and also looking at their bigger mission and their vision. My mission, again, is to be able to support an additional 2,500 women between now and 2025 in order for them to access the tools, community, and resources that they want, again, both paid or unpaid. And my thing is when I'm looking at my goals, are my goals related to that bigger mission? All right, great. I'm going to bring out, you were in my program, Everyday Payday. I'm going to bring Everyday Payday out. Well, of course, it's going to help me make money. But again, that wasn't my sole driving factor about, as one of my goals was to create a program. My factor is I know that women struggle with sales. My goal around that was, if I can teach women how to make every day a payday, I'm getting more wealth into their hands, while at the same time serving my mission of getting working with another 2,500 women to get the tools, community, and resources they need, right? So if you can get in the habit when you're looking at your goals and your overall strategy, is how is this tied into the bigger picture? Because that normally will stop you from kind of going down the shiny object syndrome road and bring you back to, actually, I don't even know what the hell I was thinking. This doesn't fit into my life, right? Because as soon as you start to have goals that aren't yours, again, your energy will shift. There'll be blocks that will start to come up, and therefore it's going to block the money flow.
Yeah, you'll have the goals and then you're not meeting them and you're like, why am I not meeting them? So, I mean, there's all these different elements that play into, it's not just about setting the goals, but it's understanding the work that you've done as a foundation to those goals, that it's meeting. And I love that word, alignment. And I think sometimes it gets a little used and abused and people are like, oh, an alignment, it sounds a little woo. And I'm like, fine, bring the woo. I'm okay with that. I'm half woo on my dad's side. I'm okay with that. But there's more to it than that. It's an alignment. I mean, we talked about this in a real systems kind of way on the episode with Layla Pomper. We're actually talking about ClickUp and if that's right for you. But the real key behind that, spoiler alert, is that it's the process, not the platform. And that process has to, each of those steps, same idea with goal setting and planning, right? Has to step back and go, oh, that connects to my mission, my vision, my purpose. Part of my mission is to show people, to shine the light on the fact that simpler is better. It doesn't have to be that difficult. Thank you for being part of that.
100%. I mean, I say one of the number one things that women are doing right now, the number one thing that women should stop doing in business right now, if they do anything else, is stop overcomplicating things. And my thing is you really, again, at the most simplistic level, there are three things that all businesses need to focus on. Now, obviously, there's sub steps underneath this, but it's build your audience, nurture your audience, sell to your audience. Stop making it any more complicated than that.
I love that. By the way, I have a post-it that I have up, and this came from Ange, and it just says build, nurture, sell. It's so simple, and I love that. So with this idea that it can be that simple, let's talk a little bit about when we are taking these goals and we're setting them. Any recommendations in terms of the timing, the frequency of it, how to break them down the right way now that we know the foundational work that needs to go into them?
I guess it's important to say, I'm giving you a way that may work for you, but it isn't necessarily the right way for you. It's the right way for me and the right way that I teach it. But also when I do my live workshops with people, and we've got one upcoming in November 17th and 18th, is that when we do these workshops, it's really important that they've got opportunity to ask those questions because, again, what works for you isn't working for me. And that's one of the things that we were talking about before we hit the record button, was that goals are also important. I guess, well, we could talk a little bit about, let's talk about the SMART goal framework, for example. So what's the right way? There is this particular framework called the SMART goal framework. And in fairness, I don't actually even know who the heck came up with the SMART goal framework, but it's this framework. Now, listen, people either love it or again, they hate it. And the reason why I would say that is they either love it or hate it is, again, it's based on personality. It's based on upbringing. It's based on environmental, it's so many things. But ultimately, SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound goals. Now, again, I do think it works. If you just say, I'm going to make, 10K months, but you don't have that time-bound, the T for SMART, do you know what I mean, involved? Well, are you going to do that in the next 6 months? Are you going to do that in the next year? Like, remember, you've got to almost not only tell yourself, but you've got to tell the universe what it is that you want so they know what to give you. So that time boundness is also critical. But what the SMART goals, again, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound, forget about is asking questions again, like what's in align? How is this goal in alignment for you? Does this goal bring you joy? Does this goal add fun to your world? Does this goal excite you? Because until you answer those questions, in my opinion, nothing should become a goal. And therefore, you wouldn't use SMART goals until you've gone through that and actually gone, yes, 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 yes. All right, great. Now I'm ready. So now some people might argue, but Ange, having a goal about starting an email list doesn't necessarily light me up. In fact, I want to gouge my eyes out, right? With the thought of it. Okay. But you're looking at the actual task at hand versus again, going back to that email list is going to be tied to your vision and your mission, right? And if you get that, or if it's tied to revenue goal, it's the long-term result that's going to come with that. I will always say is I would hope people have an understanding of the SMART goals and what those look like. But I equally would be asking anyone before they sit down to pen and paper to be asking themselves, again, alignment, fun, joy, and energy is what I'd be starting with. And then we go into one of the number one things that I find people don't do is if you're listening right now, you're probably like, great, I'm going to get my pen out, I'm going to get my paper out, and I'm just going to go and create goals. But women in particular, because we're so dang busy, we don't allow ourselves to review and reflect what has gone well. Because again, without this particular process, you're not able to know what you keep and what you don't keep for future planning. So I always say, sit down with your pen and paper and ask yourself things like, what goals were achieved? What activities and products worked well? Because you probably want to keep those in the plan for the next year. What are you most proud of from the last year? What were you most excited about from the last year? What do you want to do more of for the next year? Really sitting there and putting pen to paper, because again, we don't typically have time to go, you know what, man, that was really awesome. That actually did work well, and celebrating our wins. A lot of times we're just quick to move to the next thing and we don't actually sit in the moment. So allowing yourself to review and reflect what worked well is where I typically would start. The second thing that I would have people do is review and reflect what didn't work well. What didn't go well? What goals weren't achieved? And again, was that because of environmental, or was it because of self-sabotage? Did you also get into any bad habits? Could you have done things differently? I mean, hindsight is always a beautiful thing if you're willing to look at it not from a place of a mistake, but from a lesson, and that you don't want to have to do that again. What are you going to stop doing? What projects are you going to stop doing, right? Again, a lot of times the women will tell me that this is actually one of the most powerful things in the whole strategy planning session, because they've actually stopped working in their business and have time to work on their business in the bigger picture. And so that, I think, is also important for people to realize, is that this is about you really stepping into what's the next version of you. So it's not just a goal. It's, like I said, it's about that strategy. And a part of that strategy is understanding that, hey, I'm here to play bigger. And one of the questions that I have people answer is, well, that's all again well and good. And we've talked about the mindset. But really, if you want to hit 7 figures, if that's genuinely what you want to do, and you're sitting at 100K, a question that I get people ask is, well, who do you need to be in order to get you to where you want to go? Because until you understand who you need to be, again, you're again, throwing spaghetti at whatever. But most women say things like, oh, wow. They might say, I need to be fierce. I need to be organized. I need to not give a, do you know what I mean, rip, right, about what other people are saying. I need to feel more confident. I need to be more visible. I need to be the old 20 version of the 20-year-old version of me who just, was no limits, right? So in some ways, when you do your goal setting, again, not necessarily the right way, but Angela Henderson way, I feel people have the opportunity to almost grieve a little bit, because wherever there is loss, there is grief. So when you go through this process and you're starting to play into the bigger self, you're starting to shed yourself, which means there's an element of grief that we've got to acknowledge in order to be able to fully step into the next. So that's why I really focus on what, reflecting what went well, what didn't go well, and then asking that question, who do you need to be in order to get you to where you want to go?
And now, dear listener, you can understand why I'm such a huge fan. You have connected so many important dots. I say it till I'm blue in the face here. It's all connected. It's all connected, right? And you've touched upon so many important things in terms of our mindset, in terms of how trauma and grief, our environmental factors play in this. And even though this is your way, I think the questions that you are helping us ask are so important to set us up. Then we can set goals the way we want, or at the timing or time frame, or the details that work for us. But these are questions that are setting us up to figure that out. And I think what we're talking about, that alignment and understanding the bigger picture and how it all connects, and just like a powerful question, like, who do you need to be to get where you want to go in life and business?
And sometimes it could also mean things like, so the other thing people don't talk about in entrepreneurship is that you actually will lose family members and friends. The more money you make, I'm telling you now through experience, and also I've had this conversation with multiple people, because I was like, am I the only one? No, again, you will continue to evolve, right? It doesn't mean that you're not the same, as in like your friends will say, oh, you're not the same anymore. No, because I have done personal development and I've done work on my mindset, and I may have done some hypnotherapy, and I'm trying to improve myself. But for me personally, like, also break generational patterns here. Like, of course, I'm not going to be the same, because that's all my family's used to. So my family, who are pretty much like, I hate not to say all, but a large portion of my family, I would say probably 80%, are either drug addicts, right? Either so addicted to alcohol, addicted to drugs, addicted to gambling, addicted to prescription medication. Like, the addiction is real in our family. So I know for a fact, when I started to make more money, I also became kind of like the black sheep now. I've also lost friends along the way too. So again, that grief element, I know it's not necessarily related to goals, but I think it's important to acknowledge, because I've never heard anyone talking about how you will grieve the loss of relationships. So when you ask that question about who do I need to be in order to get to where I want to go, it might be that you need to let go of some people in your life, because they're actually holding you down, and the toxicity from those relationships are compromising your ability to step into you and to reach those goals because of their own money issues, their own self-worth issues. So again, just know that you may have to let go of some people. And it doesn't mean like they're dead to you, but it might be that you mute them on social media. So you don't unfriend them, but like you mute them, right? It might be that you actually have to get rid of someone. I actually just hired Dr. Rebecca Ray on my own podcast this last week, and she's known all around the world for boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about, again, it might be, who do I need to be in order to get to where I want, is let go of this, but I also might need to put some boundaries in place. And for me, I no longer speak to my mother, because she was someone who was a toxic relationship. I put boundaries in place. You're not going to speak to me this way. You're not going to do this. And she continued to do it. And eventually, it's almost, if I had to look, I'd say I'm 42. 42. I mean, that happened probably about 20 years ago, right? So it's like I've had very minimal to do with my mom. So I had to grieve the loss of that, right? So just know that, again, who do you need to be might mean that you need new boundaries, might mean that you're going to lose people along the way. It doesn't mean that it's anything to do with you. It's typically their own stuff that's coming up that needs to happen.
That's right. You standing where you are with what you're meant to do, trying to shine your light in this world in your way. I call this decluttering, right? And it's a variety of things that can happen. It can be people, it can be things, it can be habits, and all of the things that you're talking about in terms of where we go and the choices that we make do apply not only to goal setting, but to our habits and, just how we approach every day in our lives. And let me say it again, it's all connected.
You also talk, Lisa, about like every day. And I think it's important that if you put goals aside every single day, whoever's listening, you have choice. You have choice about from the minute your eyes wake up, are you going to be in a bad mood or are you going to be in a good mood? Right? That's your choice. Now, your husband may have kept you up snoring all night and it may have pissed you off. Yes, that's him. But you have a choice of how you respond. And every single day, it is actually your responsibility for what you want in life. But yet, and I will say this, because I work predominantly with thousands of women, is women have a tendency to try to not take responsibility. And that typically is for those individuals. The more I see those 7 major mindset blocks that I was talking about, where their mindset's more fixed mindset versus like an abundance mindset. That doesn't mean you're a bad human, but if you really want to make change, if you want to step into abundance, if you want these goals to work for you, please know that the only way that these goals are going to work with you is if you choose to take responsibility for your internal work and you choose to take responsibility on any given day.
I was about to ask if you had something that would close out our conversation, and there it is, folks. I love that. I love that. I think that's a beautiful place for us to wrap this up, Ange.
No worries. Well, thank you so much, my friend. It's always a pleasure getting to hang out with you.
Okay, we have a little bit more left, a little fun, but first, tell us where we can find you online.
Yeah, I always say for individuals, depending on how you consume content or where you choose to, play in the world of social media, head to angelahenderson.com.au. And from there, you can check out my podcast. You can check out how to work with me. You can check out my Facebook community, whatever feels right for you. So I said, just head to that main ecosystem, angelahenderson.com.au.
Yeah. And I will have that link, all her information in the show notes. So it'll be easy for you to find. And of course, if you're hanging out with me online, Instagram or anywhere else, I'm following her. So we'll all hang out together. And now with that in mind, we're going to have a little rapid wrap up with a few fun questions. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm ready.
So just filling in the blank here, a song that lifts my spirits, makes me dance.
Yeah, I'd probably have to go. Oh my goodness, I can hear it in my head. This is my fight song.
Oh, that's a good one. I love that. Well, that song will go on the Positively Living Podcast Spotify dance playlist, volume 3. We're up to volume 3 already.
Wow, so fun.
So that'll be serious fun to dance to. Okay. How about a quote or mantra that inspires me that I share?
One that I would say is that one that I share often is conversations plus connections equal conversions. So again, the more conversations you have with amazing humans because of a place of that you want to and a place of connectedness, you naturally will then have these beautiful connections where they know, like, and trust you. And eventually, when they become to know, like, and trust you within your ecosystem and you're doing it from a place of adding value in their world, it's inevitable that conversions will happen. So conversations plus connections equal conversions.
Love it. Okay. And how about a resource, a book or an app, something like that's made my life better?
Yeah, I mean, I can't not say my favorite author in the whole wide world is Bob Berg and John David Mann, who own the book called The Go-Giver. And again, the 5 laws, I'm just having a quick squiz to see if I can find it really quickly, because I think it's super powerful to give people insight. As I just said a minute ago about the importance of leading with value. And the book, The Go-Giver, I know it's rapid, so I'm trying to be quick, but the book, The Go-Giver, talks about these beautiful 5 laws of stratospheric success. And they talk about the first law of value. Your true worth is determined by how much value you give, then you take in payment. The second is the law of compensation. Your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. The third is the law of influence. Your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Fourth law is the law of authenticity. The most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. And lastly, the fifth law is the law of receptivity. The key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for giving us those laws. I've been recommending The Go-Giver. The Go-Giver is a fantastic book. I'll definitely have the link to that in the show notes, and just showed you why. So definitely check that out. Now, last but definitely not least, what or whom are you grateful for today, Ange?
Oh my goodness, who am I grateful for today? Listen, I was just having a conversation with you earlier about my team, and I would say it would be my team. I mean, I'm grateful for a million other things, but my team has allowed me to grow. My team allows me to have space. My team has allowed me to slow down in life. So 100%, I would say my team.
Love it. Well, I am grateful for you. And I want to thank you, Ange, for shining your light in this world as you do and for sharing it with us today.
Well, thank you so much. Have a brilliant day.
Thank you for joining me today. Your time is precious and limited, and I'm honored you chose to spend it with me. If you have feedback, questions, or want to schedule a chat, head to positivelyproductive.com/connect. And if you are looking for any of the resources referenced on the podcast, from books to products to training and more, go to positivelyproductive.com/resources.